It is a real pleasure to be here to talk to you about my passion. Of all the things that can reshape our society, I think the media is the most potent. Jumping off from where Dr. Elsie spoke, I sincerely believe education is an important shaper in our society, as is faith. But media, in my view, is the most potent, and I'll explain. Education teaches us what we know. Faith helps us apprehend what we can't understand. But media is the glue that holds it all together. Before we get excited, I work on 3 platforms. So for 18 years, I've been presenting radio shows. And for the past 2.5 years, I've been on television. And these days, I'm taking my digital presence more seriously. What I'll talk about today is how we can harness the opportunities media has to reshape our reality and transform society. Media has 3 roles. You'll notice everything is in 3s. In my view, of all the things media does, these are the most important. We are the watchdog of society, i.e., when somebody does the wrong thing, we back. We're also the gatekeeper. We determine what's important, and this is normal stuff, right? So whether to discuss tramadol abuse, galamsey, or discrimination, it's a unique responsibility we don't take lightly. We're also the scorekeeper, which is a role I'm increasingly liking. In Ghana's very boisterous political environment, it's always good to remind people of promises they've made and how well they're fulfilling those promises. So we are the watchdog, we are the gatekeeper, and we're the scorekeeper. Now, before we get into what media can do, I interviewed Professor Nina Kukoino, who's one of the men who brought internet to Africa. And he says to me, Bernard, for any sector to really thrive, you need the interplay of 3 things. And he gave a nice analogy using football. So you need to have the rules. You need the football pitch. You need the length. You need 11 players. You need a man in black or a woman in black as a referee. You need to decide what's a goal and what's not. So for any industry to thrive, you need robust regulation. Those who set the rules. But using the football analogy, having just FIFA and the men in black would not give a good football game. You need research to know where the best players are. Go to the favelas, find the Neymar. Go to St. Augustine's College, find Michael Essien. Or go somewhere else and look for a player who's yet to be discovered. You need all the natural science stuff that Arsene Wenger brings to bring out the best in the players. So you need great research. You need Professor Elsie Kaufman's people. But you also need the private sector. Roman Abramovich brings in his billions, buys Chelsea Football Club, and changes the way the thing works. Applying this analogy to my sector, I have something I call the transformative media triangle. This triangle has on top the reasonable regulator. When I was in class 1 in 1985, there was only 1 radio station in Ghana. And there was only 1 television station. This was Ghana Television, GBC. This is 1985. When I was writing my BEC in 1995, 10 years later, the Minister for Information had liberalized the airwaves. What happened? Private people could own radio stations. So here you are with me in university with over 300 radio stations in 2015, 2005. So every decade, something changes. Reasonable regulators set the rules for us. As we speak, we're talking about digital migration. If they don't approach the digital migration reasonably, irrespective of how smart we are as practitioners or how much money we have as entrepreneurs, things are not going to work. So we need reasonable regulators. We also need enlightened entrepreneurs, because you need Kwesi Chum to start Joy FM. You need Osei Kwame Despite to start Peace FM and have the sense to know that you can sell neat fufu on the same Peace FM and the Ohiani and Soshia, and it will still make good business sense. You need Talal Fatal to start from being a singer to now owning Metro TV and a whole host of others. You need Nick Amatefio to start CTFM to give me a job 1 year after national service. But apart from having reasonable regulators and enlightened entrepreneurs, I think at the base of that triangle is where I come in. Professional practitioners. Because entrepreneurs who own media cannot speak on the radio the way we do. So you need David Ampofo. You need Kweku Sechiado. You need Komla Dumo. You need people who take on the system, who have honed their craft to make a difference in telling fantastic stories. So let's go into what we have in Ghana now. This gentleman you're seeing on your screen is one of the most recognizable faces in global journalism. Nobody sees his face. He's taking on the judiciary. He's taking on sports in corruption. He's a fantastic example of what professional practitioners can do. If you don't know his name, you haven't begun your journey yet. Apart from specific individuals with great talent, we also need groups of young people. So I was at an event recently and I met a young lady who says she and her friends have started a promises tracker where the 195 promises made by Nana Akufo-Addo in December 2016 are being tracked in real time. So they call their website ghelectionpromises.com. And they are so granular to the point that they've separated the promises into 5 thematic areas. And as of day 605, they knew exactly how many promises had been met and how many promises had failed. So for media to shape society, you don't only need exceptional individuals. You also need people who think of business models that can take on the system in a smart way. So this website has, as of day 605, 92 of the 195 promises had not yet started. 60 of the 195 were in progress, and 32 of the 195 were achieved. 5 had already been broken. That was 4 days ago as I had checked. And the people who started this website are young people. So you don't only need great, daring anas. You need unknown people who work together to create fantastic things like this. But this is within the realm of hard news journalism. There's also something we call advocacy journalism, which is becoming increasingly important in our time, where you have media that takes on causes. We can't just be neutral referees in the arena of political heat. We must also be active participants in the aggressive field of challenging for facts. So from 2016, we've been advocating for a ban on illegal small-scale mining. It's a national campaign. There's a media coalition on illegal mining. And as we speak, illegal mining has been banned. It's a small-scale type. People are contemplating bringing it back. So journalists, to change their reality, can't just afford to bring people to come and ask questions. We must dive into the deep end. One of my good friends, Nana Banamwa, one of the most celebrated journalists in Ghana, she hosts a very powerful show. She took the mic to young men and women who were abusing tramadol. And for weeks, she focused on this advocacy. So we can't just sit aloof and say, let's report the facts. We have to take sides. Nana Bas took sides. We've also collaborated with people like Occupy Ghana. We found out recently that $1 billion had been spent building 16 hospitals in Ghana in the past 10 years. And not one of those hospitals was working. In an era where a man died after visiting 7 hospitals and there was no bed. We joined with Occupy Ghana to petition the president to do something about it. Last 2 weeks, the Ghana Baptist Convention joined the campaign to stop the no-bed syndrome. To change our reality, media has to change the way they work. The third example is what I call independent productions. And I don't know who designed that. I came after the presenter. Because this program you're seeing on your screen, the National Science and Maths Quiz, was an idea conceived 25 years ago on a tennis court by Kweku Mensah Bonsu. He didn't have money, he just had a great idea. Today is the biggest platform of learning for young people, where secondary schools, over 200 of them, compete for honors in science. Kweku didn't own a media house. He had a great idea. He produced this. I remember the first episode was at Presec, where they had to do and record and cut and paste. 25 years down the line, we have Professor Elsie Kaufman, now an advocate for not just engineering, but different kinds of education. For media to make the difference we need independent producers like Primetime to do what they do with NSMQ. A friend of mine called Latif Abubakar joined election 2016, went to Star Ghana for money to produce comedy shows in places where election violence threatened to tip over. So he was in places like Tamale to help them laugh about themselves. He did political satire. He doesn't own a media house. He's not a journalist. But we amplify his message to make a difference. What does this all mean for where we are and what we want to do as bold people? Permit me to take you back to January 2018. Ghana has almost 30 million people. A third of them are on the internet. 56% of Ghanaians are in urban areas. About 5 million Ghanaians are active social media users. Social media penetration is like 20%. About 20 million people are unique mobile users. And about 4.9 million are active mobile social users. What does this mean for the media and boldness? It means that the possibilities are limitless. It means that new models are possible. It means you don't need to sit behind a TV set. It actually means in a few years' time, somebody in Wale Wale can use mobile money to pay 5 pesos and watch live on his mobile phone this TEDx broadcast as a TV event. This is the kind of opportunity we have in the Ghana, I imagine. It also means that media doesn't become tribal and local. We can become global. So in covering the Nigerian election, we may not go to Nigeria. We can collaborate with Channels Television to beam live their national debate. Or when the Kenyans are having the election, we don't need to depend on CNN or BBC for their version of the Kenyan election. We can have Citizen TV and we can watch it from here because you don't need a television, just a mobile phone. And if you can pay 50 pesos. But it requires reasonable regulation. The people who are overseeing Ghana's digital revolution must understand the important interplay of these 3 factors. They must make sure that they set up a framework that allows business models that address our reality. Our urban poor, you don't need to live in a mansion to have access to television. And so our media managers at NCA must come together to put together a reasonable digital migration platform that makes this reality possible. Newspapers make only 30% of their revenue through sales. We don't even want to cut down trees to produce paper anymore. Why can't we have digital newspapers? People listen to my show on the mobile phone and send me a text message while in a trotro. This is possible in the era that I see. But until we understand the interplay of forces, as at now, a lot of these 3 groups, the professional practitioners, the journalists, the entrepreneurs, and the regulators are working in silos. They don't see themselves as part of a triangle of virtue. For this kind of media model to be possible, to reshape our reality, to get young people who may not have access to normal pay-per-view television, to get the quality content we are going to produce, we need to have a collaborative effort. So we must move from simply being local champions and silo-based regulators with big sticks. We must now understand the interconnectedness of ideas and the interconnectedness of systems to rechange our reality by giving access to the most powerful platform of shaping to the 30 million Ghanaians, many of whom may never have enough money to buy a television set. Thank you very much for your attention.